This conference will now be recorded.
All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the Satellite Book Club Seminar Series. Brian Gockel here from Office of OBS. We wanted to introduce our talk today. The title is VLab Cloud, Enabling Development and Fostering Innovation. Our presenter today is Ken Sperow, NOAA VLab Director and Senior Science Advisor for Cloud Computing at NWS OSTI. Our facilitator today is Paul Frisbee, Science and Operations Officer from NWS WFO Elko, Nevada. Some reminders before we get underway. We're recording this session as usual. We'll take Q&A at the end, and we encourage attendees to post their questions in the chat room. The team here will field the questions from there. Please sign in with your full names. Most of you are already doing that. It helps us keep track of who's on and helps us follow up with you in case there's Q&A that requires some after-meeting feedback. Some TowerS and Satellite Book Club emails have been going into spam folders. So if you're not receiving correspondence from us or were and are expecting it, check your spam folder. You might find it there. We're always looking for future presenters for future seminar series. We hold it each Thursday weekly. And please contact the TowerS team, Kashad Bowman and Emily Maddox specifically, and they'll get back to you with pointers on helping you out with that. Furthermore, the training team can help with training materials that might be needed to accompany your slides or more generally needed, and contact Brian Mata for that. He can assist or direct. Thanks as always to the TowerS team, Kashad Bowman, Emily Maddox, OCLO, Gozar JPSS, and our facilitator and speaker today. So a few words on Ken before we get underway. After receiving his BS in atmospheric science from UC Davis and an MS in meteorology from the University of Oklahoma, Ken Sperow started his career at the Meteorological Development Lab in 1996, developing applications for AWIPS, and later transitioning to leading a team of developers working on AWIPS. In 2001, Ken left the NWS to work for 5 years at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, developing a campus portal, and then switched to private industry, developing web applications for Fortune 500 companies. In 2007, Ken started working full-time for MDL through CIRA, and while at CIRA, Ken supported the AWIPS program on a number of areas and led to the creation and evolution of the NOAA Virtual Lab, NOAA VLab. He supervised a highly skilled cadre of over 12 CIRA employees, and over the last 6 years has focused on the application of cloud technologies to enhance the NWS's research to operations mission. It's been a pleasure working with Ken on and off all these years. Ken, welcome to the Satellite Book Club, and please begin as soon as you're ready.
All right, well, thank you for inviting me today, and I'm looking forward to sharing information about VLab Cloud and what we have to offer, and then I'm looking forward to lots of questions at the end. So as is mentioned, I'm going to be focusing on VLab Cloud, not to be confused with VLab services, which the VLab we created almost 11 years ago now, and that was focused on best practices and software development best practices, issue tracking, code review, and then collaboration through the VLab collaboration services and the LifeRay portal. But today's talk is focused on cloud. This is something that we've been doing since 2000. Our journey on this started about 2018. So I'll give you a brief overview of VLab itself, then talk about Cloud Center of Excellence, how this kind of fits into the bigger picture of cloud within the Weather Service, cloud activities that we've been involved with in supporting the future, and then give an opportunity for questions. So, the VLab itself, VLab Cloud, our goals are focused on development, testing, and training, and providing 8x5 operations. And so when I talk about operations here, we're not talking about mission critical type things, no public facing sites, requiring the 10-102 type process, if you're familiar with that in the Weather Service. This is core. It's supported by the Office of Science and Technology Integration and that portfolio. So we're really focused on serving everything that the portfolio covers, including the centers. So actually, it's jumped on that. So, you know, one of the things that we try to do is it's a balancing act, and that is we're maximizing stability while trying to remain agile, controlling and monitoring costs within the environment because it's a new paradigm when you're working within the cloud, providing security because any system, NOAA system, you have obviously any system has to be secure, otherwise the whole thing can crumble. And then providing reliable, responsive support. Our objectives here are speeding up research to operations and fostering innovation. So we provide, I'm not going to go through all of this, but it's the system is ours, system. And we basically, I have a slide at the back if people want more details, but we manage 14 different AWS accounts for different groups, ranging from like the AWIPS Program Office, Operations Proving Ground, OBS, the Tower S team that's leading the Satellite Book Club talks. So it's a wide range of groups, including, I didn't mention like the AWIPS Program Office, all their development is taking place within our space, cloud space, but we're basically responsible for the infrastructure, the security of it, making sure things are patched and scanned, but we want to delegate out and allow the different teams that are doing this work to be innovative and not get in their way there. But it's a balancing act, as I mentioned. So that's that. In terms of how we support VLab Cloud, it shouldn't come to be a surprise to anyone that's interacted with us for VLab services that we're providing 8x5 first tier support using the VLab support team. And then we have a few individuals that we call the VLab Cloud admins, and we're responsible for the deeper level of support. And that's one of the challenges with the cloud is that the types of things, and we'll get onto this, are much more varied and complicated as opposed to just, and I don't want to minimize it, but creating communities or creating projects within Redmine or other things like that. So we're all about trying to streamline this whole process so that we can scale and it'll continue to work and we can continue to provide the level of service that people have come to expect. And so, we're streamlining things in terms of a request form for new projects. We track all work within Redmine tickets, and we're, developing new tools to streamline the experience and management so that we can move more of the actions that we do to our first tier rather than having to rely upon admins. So that's, and we're promoting sharing the experiences within VLab communities and projects. So this is kind of a one-off. It ties back to a presentation I gave for the VLab forum back in June, and it had to look at, and I was asked to look at, where is the Weather Service going? What are possibilities within the next 5 years? And so one of the other hats I wear in addition to leading the VLab Cloud effort is I lead the NWS Cloud Governance Group that is responsible for cloud governance across the Weather Service, and it has representation across all the Weather Service portfolios, and also the ACIO, Becky Kunj's office as well. So one of the things that we do through that is, there's this concept of a cloud center of excellence. And so the reason I bring this in here is that, there's a transformation taking place within the Weather Service in terms of moving resources from on-prem to the cloud. VLab Cloud is part of that. I think we kind of led the way in many ways because it was lower risk on the front end of the process in terms of the research and development side. Well, things are moving now on the operations side too. And so, but I highlight within here some of the things that we've been involved with in terms of delivering quick wins. We host VLab services themselves within the cloud. NWS Chat, a component of that, was developed in terms of the bots injection into the NWS chat rooms. That was developed within VLab Cloud. And we've done a huge amount of work on AWIPS in the cloud, and that is the lift and shift, not the other effort that I'll talk about that Scott Jacobs gave a talk on recently, I believe, to this group as well, and that is like the AWIPS refactor, which is redoing AWIPS but to run in the cloud natively. So, and we're also, involved with building reusable patterns and reference architectures. So many of the technologies that we're supporting are, in my view, ways for us to change the paradigm and change what's possible within the Weather Service so that we become more agile. And so things like using Docker, Jenkins builds for, continuous integration, continuous delivery with pipelines, Kubernetes for container orchestration, and then AI ML, I think, is a growth area. So here are some examples, and I give this because I want to get people thinking about what are we supporting, how could you potentially be involved, how could you potentially leverage the cloud, and understanding what we're doing today. And then also I'm looking for, what are the needs of the future and where should we be evolving towards? Because that's one of the things I think why VLab has been successful is that we've evolved as the requirements and needs evolved. So on the development front, we're focused on, VMs using streaming. This is basically desktop sharing. And so one of the keys to our success was Jason Burks on our team was able to figure out how to get AWIPS using the GPUs to work in the cloud. So with the direct rendering, and so that was key. We have a number of groups within like MDL and the AWIPS Program Office that are using development or cloud-based workstations to do their development. And there are lots of advantages to doing that, and time doesn't allow for that, but that's of interest. Using Kubernetes, which is container orchestration and containers, the AWIPS refactor work that's underway, and VLab Cloud is doing that. We also supported that using, we ran under HPC, the 3D RTMA back in the April-May timeframe, and it's continuing. Sorry about that. And so that's underway, and we're also, one of the big wins when it comes to the cloud is doing internal facing websites. So websites are, especially if they're internal facing, are very cost effective in the cloud. So that's been, a lot's been done on that in terms of DESI, What's Up, MetViewer, MetExpress. There are quite a few sites that we've been hosting. In terms of limited support, we've done Cloud9. We're supporting Cloud9, which is a cloud-based IDE, independent development environment. We've done some work in the AI ML space. We're starting to talk a little bit more money when you get into AI ML because oftentimes you need GPUs, and the machines with GPUs tend to be more expensive per hour to use. And then HPC, as I mentioned, we supported the 3T RTMA project, and then we're talking a lot of money because you're talking about very large instances and multiple of them, and so that gets quite expensive. We have plans to support Jupyter notebooks, potentially sandboxes, some AI enhanced code development tools, AWS Code Whisper, and GitHub's Copilot. So, On the testing and training side, it's the cloud makes it really easy, and this is an advantage on the development side too, to very quickly spin up resources only when you need it. And so, OCLO, OPG, APO, the AWIPS Program Office, they've all been very active in the testing, training, and leveraging the cloud. I think it was very fortuitous that our timing worked out well, and that before COVID hit, we had figured out things so that we were able to seamlessly transition, being able to support training during COVID when travel wasn't allowed. So, we're allowing to test and train on demand anytime, anywhere. And some of the examples here I've already given: AWIPS in the cloud, the Weather Event Simulator, WES, in the cloud, and CWAS, that's a Cloud WES and Archive system. That's coming soon. That's coming later this year. That will be hosted in VLab Cloud. We also developed on the services side a scheduler that's going to support that for all the Susan does, so that they can schedule time on the instances that are going to be supporting that. So that's really exciting in my mind. And so to transition a little bit in terms of just to give you a heads up on things we're working on currently. So there's a project that we've been asked to do by all the portfolios, and that's prototyping a data lake. And so, the very first step is, what do we mean by a data lake? And it's basically, just centralized repository storing large amounts of structured and unstructured data. We already have some of this with NOD, but there's a need for more data, and our focus is, providing an API to recover, register, and retrieve data, tracking the usage, and store NWS's vast data sets, so it's available to people like you all, where that's going to be lead to innovation. So if we can get the data out there and provide cloud resources to do things with it, I think that's a recipe for success. My priority is to get some of the data sets that traditionally have been unavailable because they've only been accessible from WCOS, the supercomputer, or on IPG or IDP. So if we can get those to the cloud, I think that's going to be very advantageous for AWIPS in the cloud, DESI, What's Up, NVM, and so many other projects that I don't even know. So big picture here is, we're here on the research and development side, VLab Cloud. I have this diagram just because I wanted to highlight that the approaches and the things that we're doing here within this space are leading towards operations. And as I mentioned at the very start, we're just now, well, not just now, it's been over the last year, I would say, starting to spin up the operational cloud environment. So dissemination cloud, that's where NWS Chat is, the enterprise GIS viewer, the CP cloud, central processing cloud. So they're spinning up an environment to support IMETs and the AWIPS in the cloud for the replacement for thin client. So that's well underway. And then there are other efforts that we've been involved with where work has been done on VLab Cloud, but the operations side is going out to NOAA CIRA's Web Operations Center, the WOC. And so examples of that are like the digital.weather.gov and air quality and graphical. The sites which have historically been on NIDS are being shifted. We've prototyped them, and they've been running in VLab Cloud for quite some time, for a couple of years now. And now those are officially transitioning over to the WOC and should be up and running there later this year. So if not early next year, if things slide. So that's my spiel, and I wanted to give some links to, if you're interested and want to learn more. There's the NWS Cloud Portal. That's a community that we set up that is in support of the NWS Cloud Governance Group, and we've tried to add guidance there for, give context. Okay, I'm just starting to look at the cloud. What, how do I get involved with this? So that's a good resource to go to. I also, it's a couple plugs for talks that I've given just to give you more context if you're interested. I gave a 2-hour training session, part of VLab Forum, that was, part of VLab Cloud to our users, and that was recorded, and I provided the links there. And that's something that you can skim through, but I talk a lot more about, the cost and security side of things and how the logistics, how it all works out. And then lastly, the VLab Forum talk from back in June is there as well. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to you guys and be ready for the next phase. Thank you. So I don't know if someone's trying to talk, but we're not hearing you.
Yeah, Paul, can you hear us? This is Brian. I'll just give another second. I know Paul was trying to work out a sound configuration issue earlier. Okay. Paul, if you could sing your chat there, if you could give it another shot, we'd appreciate it. And if not, we'll continue. Just give you another second. There might be a sound configuration change. And while Paul is checking that, we can say that we're going to take questions out of the chat in a moment here. But first, just a quick announcement. Wanted to ask you all to come back if you're interested, hopefully so, a week from now, Thursday, August 3rd at noon, same noon Eastern, same time. Jarrell Torres, Research Associate and JPSS Satellite Liaison from CIRA, will discuss CIRA Slider, JPSS CONUS sector. Wanted to also encourage you to contact the TerraOS team, Kashad Bowman and Emily Maddox in particular, for questions about the Satellite Book Club or for configuration of satellite products, current existing products or new ones that we're rolling out. I'm gonna hold on a second and see if Paul was able to rejoin us. And giving you just a second, Paul. If not, I see you've got some questions here. We've got some questions lined up. So I will go ahead with those. And Paul, feel free to jump in if your audio is working. First question, Ken, is actually from Paul. And what excites you about the future of the VLab Cloud?
So yeah, so I think that within the Weather Service, there's we've had a period where we have very talented individuals, and because of just for historical reasons, we haven't had the environments available for folks to innovate, and so as a result of that, that's kind of forced things into different directions. And so I think the cloud, assuming that we can, and I think we have proven this, that that it will allow us to provide computing, especially for workflows that aren't super compute or egress or data storage intensive. It's going to be provide an environment to be able to do the sorts of work that we need. And then the other piece of it is the transformation in terms of technologies using microservices, with infrastructure as code. That's if we get that right, which we should, because this is being done across industry, where we can actually support not one release every 6 months, but I'll support releases very frequent. In industry, it's happening sometimes hundreds or thousands of times a day for the small different components. So if we can get that in place, that's going to be transformational for the Weather Service. And so that's, I think that's what excites me the most.
Okay, yeah, it excites many of the users as well. Going to go to a couple audience questions next. We have one from Ryan Solomon. He thanks you for the presentation and says that the VLab Cloud sounds like a great tool for innovation. However, given our restrictions related to Red Hat, he's interested in your thoughts on how we effectively do R2O given the software lag associated with Red Hat Linux.
Yeah, so that's a challenge, but I think it's we've addressed some of that on our end within the cloud. We've been using, and perhaps this is something that will have to be addressed downstream from there. But we've been using like Amazon Linux 2 and CentOS. Now CentOS has its own challenges because of the end of life. And we work through our ISSO, our security officer, to get permissions to allow other repos, that give us some of the tools and things that we need to be more on the cutting edge. So I think there are ways to potentially to work around the issue that Red Hat is slower. And we are shifting, my understanding, like in the AWIPS program, is it's shifting to Red Hat 8. So that'll be a step forward. It's still not perfect, but that's going to be an improvement. So hopefully that answers your question, Ryan.
All right. We've got another audience question for you, Ken. Brian Curran asks, in the near future, will we be able to archive events like AARs, which I assume are after action type reports, surveys, and service assessments? The question is, will we be able to archive things like that on VLab?
So I guess I'd have to know a little bit further about the details of what's meant by an AAR. So that's, I guess because I'm not sure if that ties into the cloud per se, or if that would be something more like, because we have some offices that are using VLab collaboration services for their shift logs and things like that. And I know that as part of the IDSS management system, which I don't have the latest dates on that, but that was slated to come out in the fairly near future for the initial operating capabilities. I know that one of the things, the features available there is the shift logs. So I guess I'd ask the question: does this tie into when we're talking about forms and things like that? I guess I'd need more information to be able to answer your question.
Oh, okay. Brian's adding.
Okay. So data. So the things that I'm aware of is when we're talking about data, are we talking about weather data? So WES, the Weather Event Simulator, and CWAS, that project is very much focused on archiving cases, and they're going to have a 30-day running, archive of all weather data that's used by AWIPS, and then in addition to that, they're going to have the ability to save off cases. So that's more on the weather side, but I don't know if that has to deal with the AARs. So.
Okay, thanks for that further clarification, Ken.
Sure.
Still welcoming. Okay, good, and that answers Brian's question. Still encouraging questions in the chat. If you have any, please enter them. And I've got one I'd like to add myself, if I may, which is, Ken, we, Office of OBS and our affiliates and GOES-R and the other satellite projects have benefited a great deal from the VLab project and all of the different aspects of the environment that it provides for maintaining our software repositories, our web pages,
Right.
documentation, and so on, and the MMM tool. And so your system, the VLab, has occupied this space that's really important for development and testing. And while it's not capital O operations, or at least the parts that we use aren't. We've done quasi-operational things. You might remember the discussion about the MMM
Yeah.
a few years ago, and what do we call it? Do we call it operational or not? So my question is, though, do you expect that you will continue to operate primarily in that zone of development, testing, and kind of quasi-operations, even though a lot of the developers, are developing things that ultimately end up in full operations? Could you speak to that a little bit, please?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, we're definitely I like sleep. I'm and my team. so that's not the only motivation, but I think there's a lot to do and to support, and a huge need on the development, testing, training side, the non-big O operations. So that's going to remain our focus. But we are definitely working with across the board within the Weather Service to help establish mechanisms whereby what's being developed within our environment will seamlessly, or to the best of our ability, seamlessly transition over to the big O operations. So we're really promoting things like infrastructure as code, and using revision control and automating the deployments, the building and deployments of the code, even when you're on the development side of it. So, so those are techniques that are going to suit us well, so that when and if something gets to the point where you're like, okay, this is great, we've proven it, it's ready to go into operations. Like, for example, the digital.weather.gov. It's actually the digital.mdl.nws.weather.gov, or not weather, but NOAA.gov site. Those, we've done that, and now we're in the process of transitioning that over to big O operations, and the web operations centers going to support it, and they have the resources to provide that 24/7 first tier of support, which we don't have within VLab itself. So I think yeah, so to answer your question, definitely we have no intention of moving into the big O space, but we are working hand in hand with the other groups to basically build systems and techniques and approaches, and using technologies that will allow for a seamless transfer. The other thing I'll mention is, we're very much focused on pushing things up in the process. What I mean by that is front loading, so that when you're doing work at the beginning, you are going through and you're discovering things, and we're doing the scanning, and you're doing the code reviews. And so when you get to the end and it needs to go to operations, there aren't surprises. So, and this is going to be key to our success within the Weather Service, for being able to more quickly transition from the research space or the development space to the operations space. And that's, part of it's the cloud, in that it's an enabler, but part of it's, depends upon changes in the agency itself. And so the cloud in and of itself isn't a change agent. It requires, our software is going to have to be re-architected to use things like microservices, and and the processes that we follow need to change as well. And so I heard something recently. It was talking about one-way doors and two-way doors. And so this is a concept where I think for a large part, we have one process in place if we want to get things deployed out to our operational environments. And we treat everything the same, or that's a generalization, but in general, I think it's fair. And what we want to do is we want to get in a situation where if something can be rolled out and quickly rolled back, a two-way door, then the process that you have to go through to get it out should be much less, take a lot less effort than something that if you go through that door and you can't come back, you can't roll that back, that's a bigger thing you have to deal with. So.
Okay, well, thanks very much for your insights on that.
Sure.
I've got a second question, if I may, which is we, Weather Service and NESDIS exchange a lot of data. If you look at the data exchange across the various line offices, probably Weather Service and NESDIS are changing the most volume of data bidirectionally with one another. And yet they're two separate line offices with different programs, and it's been a decades-long challenge. You touched a lot on development and innovation, in the VLab space and evolution. But you touched on, I'd like to hear a little bit more about your thoughts on how the VLab could be used as a development environment and then a stepping stone towards operations when it comes to data exchange. And I'll give you some examples. I don't have the specific hard numbers in front of me, but we've for decades been limited in the number of satellite products and services we could provide to users because of dissemination constraints. That is, NESDIS has its own ground systems, whether they're on premises or now in the cloud, and we have our own ground systems. And so preparing for future satellite missions has involved buying expensive networks and connecting everyone, enhancing the network connectivity. And even with that, we haven't been able to keep up. And there's been a lot of money spent on networks over the last few decades. Meanwhile, NESDIS is moving on and supporting the current generation of satellites, but preparing for the next generation of satellites like GeoXO and new polar orbiting satellites and space weather. And so it's the cloud has a lot of potential, and we're hoping that VLab, we think, plays a role in this. And I'd like to hear your thoughts on how it could position us to help solve that problem of VLab cloud development and as a way, AWIPS in the cloud and accessing cloud instances and portals of satellite and other observational data, and how that's going to help us potentially solve the dissemination challenge we have today with connecting on-premises systems with expensive networks. Anything you can say in that domain would be appreciated.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So, so this is an area that I think is the cloud has so much to offer. So, if you think about it conceptually, the problem or the challenge today is that the Weather Service has 120 some forecast offices, and so we have to get the products, which are centralized in the case of satellite, out to all those forecast offices. If we're in this paradigm where we're using the cloud fully, which VLab Cloud being the forefront, we can do this much sooner, and this is where that cloud data lake prototype is going to play a role. And we already are addressing some of this through the NOD, so previously known as the Big Data Project. So so the key here is that if you think about it, if AWIPS in the cloud, as is planned, or when it's actually running in the cloud as well. And this applies to VLab Cloud. As long as the data is being written to the cloud, which it will be in the case of satellites, and that's already happening. If we're talking Amazon Web Services, you store the data within S3 buckets, which are it's an object store, and the data is in the cloud. If we're doing our processing within the cloud, it's already there, and it doesn't cost anything to pull down that data to the cloud itself. There's some minimal charges, but for the most part, the data is there, so we don't have the latency issues. If AWIPS or when AWIPS in the cloud is running, the refactored, is in the cloud as well. It's co-located too. So even though these do cross, line offices, the technology is the same. So NESDIS is writing satellite data to S3 buckets. We can access that, and these other data sets that we're going to push up there, outside of satellite, like some of the ensemble members of the National Blend of Models, and some of the other probabilistic type information that's kind of been locked up on WCOS, having that be available within the cloud, just like the satellite data, will really streamline the experience. So, I'm super excited by this. I mean, it's gonna transform the way that we're able to do it. Now, there are other challenges, but I think we're working towards them already, and those are, you still do need good networks, but the networks are from the forecast offices back to the cloud so that you can do the streaming and have those displays. And then also the other part that touches on this is, and it's not, satellite's a good spot because it's centralized, but there are other data sets like NextRad, Upper Air, the OBS. Those are distributed, so we need the quick networks to be able to get that to the cloud. But in the case of satellite, it's centralized, stored to the cloud, and then if all the processing like VLab Cloud is taking place, same clouds, so it's really it makes it a super powerful recipe for success. So does that help?
It sure does, and I appreciate it. I think the audience, everyone in the audience appreciated it. You interpreted it broadly as I asked the satellite question, but you're absolutely right. It goes far beyond satellite data to other observational types, to model data types, and outgoing data as well. Also appreciate your answer, because while most of the satellite data is centralized, some of it is, and it comes at us from different locations, and so there's a little bit of an element there.
Sure.
But excellent answer and very complete, so we appreciate it. Not seeing any more questions in the chat. There's one more I want to return to from Paul, and I'm sorry if I missed this. The question was, for those interested in learning more, was there a contact information on one of the prior slides? Sorry if I missed it. If someone's got the slides, can call that back up. If anyone has further questions, there it is. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, so I'm assuming I know these slides will become available, and so the links you'll have access to it. And then I did have a few backup slides too in here that, just give a little bit more detail in terms of some of the mechanics behind it. And so anyway, yeah, so I really appreciate the time, and hopefully this was helpful for people. So
yeah, definitely was, and wanted to thank you, Ken, you and your team for all that you've done for VLab and the satellite community all these years.
You're welcome. Yeah, I have an excellent team, so I'm blessed for that. So thank you. We enjoy working with you guys. So
yep. All right. Well, thanks, Ken, for that presentation and that information on VLab. Really appreciate it. And Paul, sorry we were not able to get the audio problems worked out. It's happened to almost all of us who run this. Occasionally we have these snafus with the different web type meetings we're doing, GoToMeeting, WebEx, Google Meet, the rest of it. So we apologize for that, and we hope you'll come back, and we promise next time to get everyone set up with the audio working. To everyone, please join us a week from now, Thursday, August 3rd. As mentioned earlier, Jarrell Torres, Research Associate and JPSS Satellite Liaison from CIRA, will be back to discuss CIRA Slider, the JPSS sector. And apart from that, just wanted to thank everyone for joining. Thanks, Ken, for his talk again, and facilitation from Paul, and all the audience members for your participation. We'll see you a week from today.